will be recorded. So if you don't want to have your face shown or anything, I would recommend turning off your camera now.
Hi, my name is Colleen Callan. I'm a documentary filmmaker making a documentary about the landfill. And I was told that this would be an interesting meeting to watch, and I have to ask permission to record it. So it says I have to ask permission of the host. I'm not sure if, Michelle, are you the host?
Well, I'm hosting this, but I'm not the Zoom host. However, we always record all of our meetings. So we can also go ahead and email that to you.
Perfect. Okay.
Yes, no problem. And we put them all on our Facebook as well. So if you want to see any past meetings, you can also go ahead and check them out there.
Okay, I would just need some written permission to use some of that in our documentary. A simple email saying you can use this is fine.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and send you our email address.
Perfect.
Colleen, hello, Colleen. How you doing?
Hi. Hi, Dennis. How are you?
I'm okay.
You can't get rid of me. He tries and tries.
Hello, Joe Diamond.
Lily. Oh, Miss Lily, I'm so glad to see you.
Yes, I'm happy to see you too. You know I'm busy.
You're always busy. Yeah, I know that.
May I just, Michelle, may I just tell you that I am a former resident of East Patchogue and was involved in all of this earlier on. And now I'm in Ohio, where we have more
thanks for joining us from Ohio. We appreciate that. That's awesome.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Yeah, so welcome to everybody that's joining us from here. And look at that, BLARG transcends. We're all the way here from Ohio as well. My name is Michelle Mendez. Again, she, her pronouns, and I'm a member of BLARG. Just make sure that everyone, you keep yourselves muted during the meeting so that there's no outside noise when anyone is talking, and we make sure we're as respectful as possible. Also, if you have any questions or any comments, make sure that you write STACK in the chat, which is at the bottom of the screen. You can just click that and it'll show up on the side if you're using a laptop or desktop. So today we have COVANTA joining us, and they are a waste management company. They actually have facilities all throughout the United States, Canada, and Europe, and they actually have a few facilities right here on Long Island. At this time, their ash is being accepted by the Brookhaven landfill, and that is ultimately what brings us here today as we continue to fight for environmental justice. COVANTA is going to have about 15 minutes to do a presentation that they plan on sharing with us, and then several BLARG members, per usual, have some questions, and so for the representative. So after the presentation is completed, they will then go ahead and ask their questions. Once those few questions are asked, we will then open up the floor to the community, and members will be able to ask more questions in the order that you wrote STACK into the chat. But as of right now, we're going to go ahead and allow Miss Hannah to start us off to introduce BLARG a little bit further. So Hannah, if you can unmute yourself if you are here. I see Monique and Hannah here. Let's see, we could be having an audio problem. One moment. Hello. Good to go. Miss Hannah, you are going ahead and introducing BLARG.
Okay, are we beginning?
Yes.
Good evening. I apologize for my lateness. My name is Hannah Thomas. I'm from the Bellport community. I've been a resident here for 50 years. What I want to say is that me personally, my community has been impacted with this landfill for decades now. We can't get any answers and no transparency from the town of Brookhaven of any remediation or the next course of action for waste management. I'd like to say thank you for COVANTA for coming on. And as far as BLARG is concerned, it stands for Brookhaven Brookhaven Landfill and Remediation Group. And we have made many strides to encourage our officials of town of Brookhaven and so forth to come more forthwith with what exactly happening with the landfill. We understand that they have given us a close date of 2024. The ash proposal has been rescinded, but we still want to know what's going to be going on from now to 2024.
Right.
So we're not interested in zero waste management to the landfill. We're more concerned with zero waste. So we want to move beyond that. We're not happy with just the fact that you're saying we're closing, that there's no ash fill. We want precise answers to the waste management. What is being done for the previous destruction of our air and our water from 1974. So that's what BLARG is about. So we're happy to have COVANTA here. We'd like to know their plans. If they could give us some insight, since they are partnership with the town of Brookhaven, maybe they can give us a little information, because this is a community that's laden with poor health, no transparency. And if it wasn't for BLARG being involved in this community, we might as well be blind and deaf. If I could just put it to you, just point blank in layman's terms. This is a disgrace. I want people to be responsible. The people who are the cash cows and the beneficiaries of this landfill, even though we do need and to acknowledge the extent of waste crisis, and to address the fact of the fact of environmental injustice, and to address not only our community, but all communities of color. So all these questions that we're going to put out to COVANTA are fights that BLARG is involved in, because we're not only sticking up for our own community, we are sticking up for people of color, Latinos, Blacks, Indonesians, and help me with that.
Indigenous.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you. I appreciate it. I'm a little hyped. I just walked in the door. And so many areas of corruption that we just, BLARG is trying to bring all this to the plate to save a community that is ridden with this for 5 decades. I could go on for the next 15 minutes, but I'm going to turn it over to Michelle. She can start the questioning, and I hope I did give a
Thank you. All right, thank you, Hannah. As always, thank you so much. We're gonna go ahead and now pass the floor over to COVANTA. We have Paul Gilman, their Senior Vice President. We have Rick Sander, their VP General Manager. We have Ed Sancool, COVANTA Hempstead Facility Manager. Maureen Early, their Long Island Community Specialist. So if you, whoever wants to go ahead and take the lead can go ahead and unmute yourself.
So Paul, would you like me to share my screen? Would that be okay with everybody? I'll present the PowerPoint.
That'd be great, Ed.
Okay.
Just made you co-host.
Let's see how good you are, Ed.
Yeah, the pressure's on. Okay, the PowerPoint should be up.
Go to the first slide.
And I just have to go to presentation. Oh, sorry, first slide.
There it is, Ed.
Okay, does everybody see the presentation? Oh, yeah. Okay, Paul, turn it over to you and I'll let you know when to advance the slides and I will do so.
Okay, and again, my name is Paul Gilman. I have the title of Chief Sustainability Officer for COVANTA. I've been with the company about 12 years, helped establish a sustainability program with the company when I came at that time. Why don't we go to the next slide, Ed? You all have been in the process of educating yourself to how our country deals with solid waste. So you've probably bumped into the thoughts on this screen, which is really the philosophy behind how we approach waste management. This represents both the US EPA and the European Union. And you know the words, it's reduce, reuse, recycle. What we do is sometimes called the fourth R, it's energy recovery. And that's trying to get the energy out of what's left over out of our waste after we reduce, reuse, and recycle, and a step that's taken before disposal. Why don't we go to the next slide, Ed? In the US, energy recovery isn't as big of an enterprise as it is, say, in Europe. And so this slide shows their little pie charts up at the top there. The brown shows the percent that the US, Canada, Denmark, Germany do for landfilling. And you can see that the US landfill is about 64% of our waste. The blue represents energy recovery. And we'll talk a little bit more about exactly what that is. And then in the US, you can see we do about 29% of our waste is recycled. And that really contrasts pretty strikingly with a place like Germany or like Denmark, where in Germany, for example, they recycle as much as we as a country landfill. And they do energy recovery on what's left over. Denmark does more energy recovery than they do recycling. They use the steam produced from the municipal solid waste to produce heating and cooling for their cities, as well as electricity. In the US, we pretty much do electricity. So very different picture between the US and the European Union. There are about 400 facilities like the ones that you have on the island for doing energy recovery from waste in Europe. And there are, a little over 70 facilities like that in the US. Why don't we go on to the next slide? So this slide just really represents the kind of the decision that a community can make when it comes to deciding what it does with waste after it's done the reduce, reuse, recycle. You have the option of landfilling. There are a set of considerations that go with that, whether or not it's related to the leachate from the landfill, whether it's related to the methane that's generated by the materials degrading and rotting in the landfill. We think that sending the waste to energy rather than the landfill is a better option, both in a greenhouse gas sense for reducing the amount of methane that's generated from a landfill. And it also provides an opportunity to recover metals. We do that from the combusted ash that's left over. And it winds up in producing significantly more energy than if you were to let the waste go to a landfill, decompose, try and capture some of that methane and generate electricity from that. We'll go to the next slide.
Hey, Paul, maybe I'll take the next couple of
Good.
slides. And let me start off, first of all, by saying thank you to all you folks for giving me the opportunity, to speak with you all today. My name again, I'm Ed Sankel. I'm the facility manager here at the Hempstead facility. And so this first slide just shows New York and how COVANTA represents New York. You can see, that we have the Hempstead, Huntington, Islip, Babylon, Onondaga, and Niagara facility. And between those 6 facilities, we're processing 2.6 million tons of New York's waste, which of course is avoiding 3.5 million tons of greenhouse gas that would otherwise be generated in a landfill. And that's the equivalent to pulling, as you can see, 690,000 cars off the road each year. This is Long Island, the facilities that are operating here on Long Island. Of course, there's this facility, the Hempstead facility, but we also have the facility in Huntington. We have one in Babylon, and we have one out in Islip. And so the combined capacity for the 4 facilities is around 1.8 million tons of solid municipal waste a year. Okay, and so you can see we're generating 125 megawatts of clean renewable power, and in doing so, preventing 160,000 truck trips of waste being taken off the island each year. This slide, a little bit about Hurricane Sandy. Interestingly, if you look at the bottom 2 pictures, those are actually pictures of Nickerson Beach down in Long Beach after Sandy. That's the parking lot there. And after the hurricane happened, as I'm sure you guys all know, there was quite a bit of waste. And we worked closely with community leaders and a bunch of public officials to help provide a solution for this problem. And COVANTA was a big part of that. We stayed open around the clock and really did a lot to service the communities and help with this issue. I do also want to point out that, there were a lot of blackouts that were going on during the storm and a lot of loss of power. The Hempstead facility was one of the few facilities that actually stayed online and continued to export power, really helping out with grid resilience. So really proud of that fact. A little bit about the Hempstead facility specifically. So we employ 84 full-time staff members here. We're processing just over 1 million tons of post-recycled solid municipal waste, right? And so the different municipalities and communities around us have their recycling program where people are required to separate out all of the materials in accordance with that program. And then afterwards, what's left after the recycling is done, that waste is what comes to our facility where we process it, generating about 81 megawatts of electricity hourly. That's roughly 1,950 megawatts in a 24-hour period, which is enough electricity to power all of the internal needs of this facility, and then also power about 75,000 homes and businesses in the surrounding community. In processing that waste, you can see that we're removing over 1 million tons of greenhouse gas. This is waste that would otherwise be in a landfill where it would turn into methane. And we're also removing all of those trucks that would otherwise have to transport that waste to the landfill. This facility, we're pulling out 31,000 tons of metal. And our primary clients, as you can see, is the town of Hempstead, of course, Brookhaven, Garden City, and Lynbrook. And we do quite a bit of community outreach, and maybe Maureen, you want to jump in a little bit on this slide?
We do have extensive community outreach programs in place. Our COVANTA's RX for Safety program provides a no-cost safe disposal and destruction of medications, which is in response to the opioid epidemic and keeping our waterways clean. We do a lot of tours here at this facility and the other 3 as well, where we take the opportunity to give firsthand information, sometimes through mentorships. And during each of those, it's important to recognize that we really promote recycling. I don't think there's a tour here that we don't really push the opportunity to educate the community on recycling and the importance. The Prosper Group awarded us last year the corporate award for our dedication to the mentorship that we've done with their at-risk teenagers, which was really incredible. We do a whole lot. Family and Children's Association, we are in partnership with them. They addiction prevention and recovery, children's mental health, senior citizens, back to school programs, making sure all kids are going back to school with a full backpack. We're a main sponsor of Operation Splash, keeping the waterways clean. There's actually a COVANTA boat now. Reefs Across America, we provide no-cost disposal and recycling of the metal of all the wreaths that are laid on veterans' graves across Long Island. So we're super proud of that. Mercury Take Back, we support the local municipalities on their household hazardous waste programs by providing incentives for the return of mercury to keep it out of the waste stream. Many outreach centers, soup kitchens. Stony Brook University is a favorite with the Evan Livlet Foundation there, where we promote the efforts of Evan Livlet, who was once a big solid waste manager and recycler on Long Island. There's millions more that I'd love to share with you, but I think you get the flavor of how deeply committed we are in our communities.
Paul, maybe you want to take these next few slides?
Sure. You know, so we wanted to focus in on the discussion of, so what comes out of the stack of these facilities? That's the kind of thing that people are concerned about. And so this slide really does represent what does come out of the stack. The fact that the units that we operate run as hot as they do really does break down everything that's in your garbage to its building blocks, if you will. So over 99% of what comes out of the stack is what's typically in our air. It's the water vapor, oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, et cetera. What's left over are the emissions that are the regulated emissions that we have to keep at permit levels for the operation of the facility. And those are standards that are set by the state, and the state is really the agent of the federal government for the operations of these facilities. Why don't we go on to the next slide? When we started our sustainability program as a company, you know, a dozen years ago, one of the first things we did was form up a group of stakeholders to lay out for us issues and concerns that they thought we as a company should be addressing. And one of the chief ones was the question of environmental justice. And so we started out on a path to try and address environmental justice as an operating company. And the very first thing we did was develop a policy that would lay out how we would seek to interact with our communities and as it related to the operations of our facilities and seeking permits and the like, that we would undertake a process of engagement with those communities, conversations, all in an effort before we started to do any permitting or modifications to get the input of the community. So in establishing that policy, I think we were the second company in the US that had done such thing. There haven't been very many since, but that was a start for us. Why don't we go on to the next? Because there was more to it than just the policy. We set ourselves on a path of trying to reduce our emissions, to not just be in compliance with our permits, but go beyond that. Let's try and operate with our best practices, procedures, best maintenance and the like, to try and operate well below what we are permitted to emit as a facility. And we also undertook an effort to try and where facilities that we operated didn't have state-of-the-art equipment, to replace that equipment, to put in place controls for particulate matter, for nitrogen compounds that would better serve the communities where we operate. And we have, as recently as the sustainability report we finalized in 2019, committed to do 5 major projects in environmental justice communities along these very same lines. And you know, as you see on this slide, we've got 2 highlighted for Camden, New Jersey, and Chester, Pennsylvania, that are currently in the lineup for that. Why don't we do the next slide?
Excuse me, I just want to take a quick second. You're about to hit the 15 minutes, so I just wanted, if
Sure.
how you guys want to maneuver that.
Well, do you want me to stop now, or?
I mean, if there's some slides that you would kind of prefer to focus on.
Okay, well, just as we turn to it, tell me that you're not interested in one, and then I'll skip it. So this is talking, for example, about Hempstead's emissions and where they operate relative to their permit, considerably below. We can move on from that. This is how much does a facility like Hempstead contribute to the county where it operates. This is looking for NOx, SOx, sulfur compounds, nitrogen compounds, particulate matter, volatile organic compounds. And, you know, as you can see, in relative terms, it's a relatively minor contributor, not insignificant, but the vast majority, for say, of something like NOx is the transportation-related compounds. Okay, let's go to the next one, please. People say these are older plants. How do we know they're operating well? So this slide shows, for example, for Hempstead and the New York plants in general, where do they operate relative to US standards for existing plants, for any new plants that would be built, for the European standards. I used the example of a facility completed in Dublin that we built and operate for the city of Dublin. And as you can see, the performance of the plant is very acceptable relative to both existing US, new US, or new European facilities. Let's go on to the next one. This is a summary slide that looks at a number of studies that have been done by communities, not a study done by the COVANTA, the company, but in the case of Portland, Vancouver, and the like, the Health Protection Agency of England, asking the question, if you go out and look at the published scientific literature, try and survey it in total, what does it tell you about health effects associated with these facilities? And in the interest of time, I'll let you read that at your leisure. We'll go on to the next slide. And you know, on the question of ash in particular, this is a slide that talks about the ash that's produced at the facilities. And what we do in terms of the ash residue that is produced. It winds up being about 10% by volume of the waste that goes in, 25% by the weight. Let's go on to the next one. Just a visual of it. Go on to the next one. So this slide explains about the ash, the fact that it has been combusted. It does get tested per a test that's provided, the guidelines are provided by the US EPA to ask what could possibly leach out of the ash as it's disposed of in a landfill. The test requires the ash to be soaked in an acid for a 24-hour period and look to see what might come out of that. And it can't be disposed of if it can't pass that test. And we haven't failed a test on that disposal to date. Why don't we go on to the next one? Question about what about the handling of ash at a landfill as it's being disposed of? What I put up here are really the discussion from a study that was done for landfill disposal at a facility in Massachusetts, looking at whether or not there was fugitive dust emissions associated with the disposal of that ash. The study found that there weren't significant dust coming from the disposal process. And it was done with a sensitivity sufficient to be able to tell when a diesel truck was on the site. So it wasn't like a visual test. It really was a particulate matter sampling process to see whether or not there were fugitive dusts associated with these practices of disposing of the ash. Let's go on to the next one. And we are in the process of developing an ash processing system that should be able to reduce the ash that we dispose of probably by about 50% by being able to separate aggregate for asphalt and road construction, concrete production, extra metal recovery, and the like. And I'll stop with that one. I think that's probably the last one. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Gilman. I appreciate that. So what we're gonna go ahead and do right now is we're gonna go ahead and open the floor to the BLARG members who had prepared questions. And then from there, we're gonna open it up to all the community members. However, remember, if you have a question or a comment, anything you would like to say, please put stack in the chat box because that's going to be the order in which we call on you when that time arises. As of right now, our first question will be coming from Ryan.
Good evening, all. My name is Ryan Madden. I'm the sustainability organizer with the Long Island Progressive Coalition. And, you know, there were some, I think, responses in the chat that kind of get to the kind of level set that we want to kind of set off in the very beginning. Because it feels important to note that like many of us here are oriented in such a way that we believe that this business should not exist at all, that all waste incinerators must be closed, and that comprehensive waste management plans must be established that move us towards zero waste. And that to have any real relationship or care for issues of environmental justice is to be committed to phasing out this method of waste management. So I'm going to preface some stuff before I ask a very pointed question. I just want to note that the following information that I'm pulling from is from two reports, one called Big Pollution, Big Influence, Power Companies Ramp Up Spending in Albany, Targeting Climate Laws, and False Solutions, Gas and Trash, How the Fossil Fuel Industry is Holding Back a Just Transition. So the specific health toll of incinerators is really hard to isolate, as many are cited in areas afflicted by other sources of pollution and health vulnerability, but incinerators seem to stand out still. They are dirtier than coal plants when it comes to local pollution, emitting, among other pollutants, an estimated 14 times more mercury, 5 times more carbon monoxide, and nearly 7 times more nitrogen dioxide per megawatt hour, according to New York's Department of Environmental Conservation. 6 of New York State's 10 incinerators are among the 12 most polluting in the country on at least one major pollutant. And together, these 12 facilities expose populations totaling 1.6 million people. The Babylon Resource Recovery plant in Babylon ranks first in mercury emissions, which are associated with a slew of neurological disorders and other health impacts. And then to get even more specific around COVANTA, collectively across New York State, COVANTA has the highest amount of annual nitrogen oxide emissions in New York State grouped by corporate ownership, more than National Grid and Con Ed, major utilities in our state. You're also in the top 10 for annual carbon dioxide emissions in New York State grouped by corporate ownership. As noted in that report as well, there has been a recent surge in lobbying by energy companies coinciding with increasing public concern about the climate crisis, a bevy of new state and local laws to curb emissions, invest in clean energy sources, create jobs in disadvantaged and frontline communities, and ensure a just transition to a sustainable jobs for workers in the fossil fuel industry. And from 2011 to 2020, COVANTA spent $1.5 million in lobbying in New York State. So with that level set, which gives us a very good reason to be curious about your motivations in even speaking with us, given your orientation and financial incentive and your lobbying expenditures, I'd like to ask a very specific question to Paul Gilman, given your position on the Waste Advisory Panel under the Climate Action Council, under the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, New York's landmark climate law, which the Long Island Progressive Coalition was responsible for helping to pass. And we are closely tracking and organizing around the implementation process. So because of that, we know that the local scale diversion and climate justice subgroup of that panel has made the following, which is made up of environmental justice leaders, are making the following recommendations on incineration. On a mitigation strategy, they're recommending the decommission to decommission New York State incinerators and end contracts with out-of-state incinerators by 2030, including not permitting any subsidies or new permits for incinerators or incineration burning by other names, whether that's pyrolysis or gasification. And then to enable the strategy throughout the phase down of incineration, require the best available continuous monitoring and control technologies for all pollutants at existing incinerators, fully enforce all environmental laws and permit conditions that apply to incinerators, ensure ash testing and enforcement of hazard ash siting laws. So in your position on this panel, informing our statewide emissions reduction goals under CLCPA, can we count on you on behalf of COVANTA to support these recommendations?
Let me start by saying, I would agree with you, and I think probably everyone on this call would, that in our best world, we'd have no waste. I don't think anyone would argue with that. What we're talking about is how do we operate under the existing circumstances? I think we asked the question, what's the best way to deal with waste? My first slide was really about what are the frameworks for approaching that we have as a US EPA or as a European Union. And I do think the reduce, reuse, recycle, energy recovery, and lastly, landfilling is the right priority to put things in. And I also believe that you can do energy recovery as you can do recycling in a safe and effective manner. I think we do that today in the United States. I think certainly the Europeans believe they do it effectively with a place like Germany having no landfilling. And doing everything they do with both recycling and energy recovery. So I think your premise that recovering energy from waste is unhealthy and not a sustainable approach is simply not correct. And so I don't agree that as a way to deal with waste should be phased out. We would hope we get to a point where all forms of disposal are not necessary, and even recycling is minimally necessary, but we're not there yet.
So I know we have a whole bunch of other questions, but I guess I would just raise that the continued usage and acceptance of incinerators provides the perpetuation of not dealing with zero waste strategies and moving towards that world. So if you're not committed to basically ending your business enterprise at some point, it means that you don't actually want to solve the problem.
Oh, I would say at some point that would be the case, certainly, but not at this point.
And 8-9 years from now is still 2030 is the recommendations by the subgroup.
And ultimately, it's communities that make those decisions. We service the communities in question. We don't tell the communities what to do. We don't tell the state of Connecticut or New York or New Jersey what to do. We service their needs.
You're on a working group that is making recommendations for the scoping plan for our climate law. That implies decision-making power. Recommendations imply recommendations. So that feels disingenuous.
Well, it's not. I'm being perfectly frank with you. The fact is we need to ask, how can we move the state of New York away from the methane generation that is the principal contributor to the waste stream? The secondary sort of contributor certainly has to be, how can we better recycle materials and the like, so that we can avoid the greenhouse gas generation that comes with the mining of metals and having to fabricate them as a first order, as opposed to as a recycling matter. So all of the recommendations of the panel are aimed at how do we reduce the emissions associated with landfills, with energy recovery facilities, with recycling and the like. I mean, it's a comprehensive approach.
I'll cede it
Right.
back to you, Michelle.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you feel like that was substantial?
In the ways that it was unsatisfying, yes.
All right, so on that note, we're gonna go ahead and go to our next question, which will be asked by Ms. Hannah.
Hello, everyone. I have to first start off with saying, as a member of BLARG, waste to energy is a disposable technology that destroys the natural resources. It doesn't really reduce waste because you still need a landfill to bring your ash to. So that's not reducing waste. It might not fill up the landfill as quick as municipal waste, but you still need our landfill in our community to bring your ash. So that's not reducing. It might be extending time, but it does not reduce it. And it does not protect our natural resources. I want to say that. I have some questions, but I felt the need to say that. So what I would like to know, me being a community resident and my counterparts on BLARG, we are against, as you do know and can tell, against the ash fill. So since the town decided not to continue with the proposal for the ash fill, and you are in contract with the town of Brookhaven, which is not transparent to us, but you are partners with them and have agreed to come to speak to us. I'd like to know, are you going to continue to deliver your ash to our landfill until it closes in 2024? That's my first question. Knowing that the community ad hoc committee and opinions of various communities and environmental groups that we are against the ash fill, and you are still in contract with the town of Brookhaven, we are still going to be receiving the ash fill until 2024 until it closes down? That's my first question. Does anyone have an answer to me?
Well, Rick, I think you probably need to talk about what you're hearing from the town.
Right. And yes, the landfill is due. They're talking about closing, yes, and we hear it's closing in 2024. And we take Brookhaven's garbage, into the Hempstead facility. And on a reciprocal basis, we bring ash, the resultant ash, to the landfill. And we have a contract with the town of Brookhaven.
Brookhaven's garbage. I'm sorry to interrupt you, sir. That's very rude of me. I apologize for that. You take municipal waste and burn it and bring it to the Brookhaven landfill. I don't need to know the particulars of what you're saying about the town of Brookhaven. You, as giving the outward appearance that you are so concerned about our community. You are here for us. You know that we are against the ash bill. My question is to you, are you going to continue with the partnership of the town of Brookhaven and other municipal waste garbage to be burnt in your incinerators and brought and dumped in the landfill in Brookhaven? That's the question.
Okay, and we have a contract, you know,
That's all you have to say, sir. Yes or no?
yes, we are going to continue
Okay.
to,
All
yeah.
right, I'm very disheartened by that. So as far as your community outreach, so that is nay. Because you know that we feel that it is an environmental injustice for that to continue to happen. That's why we are against it. But since you do have a contract and that's the cash cow, I understand that. Now let me move on to another piece of subject. You gave me the answer, yes. Now I see a new proposal here that was made in 2021, and I can't commend you now that you have reduced the amount of trucks, because now you will take the solid waste and bring the ash back in the same truck that takes the solid waste, so the trucks don't move around empty. But what did that do for the pollutants that already happened in the last 5 decades when you came aboard? You have made agreements and partnerships more than once with the town of Brookhaven. 10 years, it's got extended, and now you are able to bring Asheville to the landfill to 2024 until it closes. And there's nothing we can do about it because you have a partnership with the town of Brookhaven, something that we can't even talk to. And we think it is an environmentally unhealthy and unsafe and an injustice. So now that you're gonna have only so many trucks coming and so many trucks going, and you have reduced the amount of trucks, what does that do for the pollutants that you have done for decades already? Are you going to put out your community efforts to get us more air quality control, since you can't afford it? More water monitoring? Are you going to ensure after you dump all this ash in 2024 that they're going to get the high power capping? The things that cost extensive money, the monitoring of the landfills for 30 years, that's only the responsibility of the town of Brookhaven. You're their partners, but so I'm not really, my heart is not pouring out to you what you're saying to me. And the next thing I want to also talk about, not only at BLARG are we concerned about our own backyard, we are concerned about all of diverse communities. And as far as you saying that you gave 86 jobs, that's nothing. You print out that you're gonna give jobs for the recycling and this and that, 86 jobs is nothing. That's not even a third of a community, first of all. So now you have a new partnership, I see, with North Hempstead. I don't want to get in deep and tell you about the people who live in North Hempstead, the diverse population in North Hempstead, environmental injustice. So now you have a waste energy facility located in Westbury. I can go on and on and on, sir. Go on and on and on. I want to know what you are going to do as a major company who feels that have stepped on toes and have done things wrong and have caused added air pollution, poor quality control. I can't think what I'm trying to say, sir, but you're catching my drift, and I'm sure that you are. I feel that you have not done everything correctly aboard. What are you going to do for remediation for our community? But you would like us to endorse an incineration plant? There's no way to contain methane. You are dropping ash 4 miles from our elementary high school in our shelter and my community. My last question is to you, sir. as you being a person and a company that claims to be so humane, could you please ask the town of Brookhaven to come aboard? Maybe you and your partners can have a meeting with us. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
All right, I know that what Hannah said is important, and I really hope that you guys did hear her. And I just want to kind of highlight that she was also asking regarding remediating the air and the groundwater, the plume, all of that. Could you at least try and respond to that portion of the question that she had?
Paul, I'm not sure I can answer that one.
Yeah, I mean, our discussion about our contribution to the landfill really is about how we deliver that ash, and that we deliver it in a state that is what our regulators require for us in order to assure that it's an environmentally sound state as it's disposed of. And we work very hard to meet those requirements. We have met those requirements, and we don't operate the landfill, but we are very focused on the results of the testing that the town does. We're not privy to them any more probably than you are, so we go to the publicly available information to try and monitor that and stay on top of that. And we would agree that everything has to be operated in a way that meets the requirements of the New York Department of Environmental Conservation, and that the facility, as it's closed in 2024, has to be closed in a way that meets the requirements of the New York Department of Environmental Conservation.
I have a question. I'm sorry to interject.
No, please, we have stack. So
it's stack. I put it in relation to what he's saying. I apologize. It's on stack.
Okay.
Thank you very much. This is still my question. So you are telling me COVANTA does care enough about our community that you are monitoring the air?
The air associated with our facilities, yes, that's monitored.
So your depositing of the ash at our landfill is not part of your facility once you dump it on our grounds. Is that what you're saying to me? So you monitor only the incinerating portions of it, but once it is dumped at the Brookhaven landfill, it is no longer a concern of yours. It is a concern of the town of Brookhaven.
It's a concern.
Is that what you're telling me?
It's a concern of ours, but we don't run the monitoring program or the day-to-day operations of the facility that are associated with its closure and that sort of thing. So it's of concern to us, just as it is of concern to you, but we don't do that work. We don't.
I know you just burn and dump the ash and spread the methane. I understand that. There's another question to me. Once the sixth cell is closed, okay, because I'm following the landfill, we are obligated by the town of Brookhaven, because we have a contract with you, COVANTA, to take the ash. Once a cell is closed, they automatically have to open up another cell to accommodate the ash. So we are totally against BLARG for the reasons that you will hear and continue to hear. But I just wanted that answer. And I thought that, reading a little bit more about you, that you were more concerned about the community than profit. But evidently, you know. So I have no more questions. I'm gonna move the panel on to someone else. Very disheartening, sir. I live 4 miles away from the landfill. I'm a community advocate for my community, and I've been dealing with this for decades. And also in North Hempstead.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and pass over the mic to Monique.
All right, so I'm just gonna kind of pick up the ball a little bit. Our questions are pretty much similar, and from your responses, we're just gonna have to hammer this in continually. So one of the things that you guys were saying and what I'm hearing is that, you know, you guys are interested in the community, you know, you're into, you know, these, I guess you can call them ad hoc fixes, volunteering, soup kitchens is what I heard, Operation Splash. These things are very temporary. They do nothing to help a community forward. So my basic question is about the remediation portion. So COVANTA has been in contract with Town of Brookhaven since 1989. And we've been dealing with this landfill since 1974. So the problem that I see is COVANTA has this contract with the Town of Brookhaven, and COVANTA is, you know, from what I saw, a multi-billion-dollar company worldwide, and the lives of the Black, Latino, and Indigenous people in this community, as well as in North Hempstead, as well as all the other places where COVANTA exists. We are putting our lives on the line while you are profiting heavily, immensely. Also, like what Hannah was saying, like Hannah was saying, as far as this contract, you guys are still going to be dumping until 2024. So we're still going to be feeling the effects of this ash fill, the ash that comes from your incinerators, without question until 2024. The gentleman that is on the panel with you kind of alluded to the fact that he's not even sure that 2024 is going to be the end point. And that is exactly why BLARG started, because we are not exactly sure that they're going to close this down in 2024. So I'm just wondering, you guys decided to come to our meeting. I don't know how much research you did about us, but as you can tell, we want no incinerators. We want the landfill to be closed. We want actual zero waste, and we don't want to be, what's the word? Whatever the word is, we don't want to be told that that's some pie in the sky goal, okay? We're not children. You know, you don't have to try to like dismiss what we're saying as if we're being idealists. It's not about being idealists. It's about doing what's right and sticking by it. So since you partner with the Town of Brookhaven, you have a contract with them, you're making your money, the town is making their money, and the community is just suffering. That's all we get is suffering. So when is COVANTA going to use that partnership with the Town of Brookhaven to actually give back to the community that is suffering in a real way? Not these soup kitchens, these ad hoc programs that does nothing but keep people in perpetual poverty, but in a way that a community can actually strive without a landfill and without incinerators. Okay, so this is the question that I have for you. Now, I understand that your bottom line is probably the most important thing to you, but at the same time, you did agree to come to this meeting, and this is what we're about. So can you please answer, do you have any plans to assist us with getting our just due? Because the landfill also needs to be cleaned up. That's going to cost money. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying we need to be remediated and we need funding in this community. We need those remediations to go, the money to go to remediating the actual physical landscape in this community, and also to the people who are suffering poor health outcomes, people who are just suffering in general because they have this mountainous, toxic landfill next to our community. We have no voice in getting it to end. We have no voice to stop this contract with you and the town. So why are you here if you're not here to do those things?
Yeah, if I could just clarify one point, Paul. You mentioned about the landfill closing in 2024. That is our expectation. That is what we've been told by the town of Brookhaven, and that's what we expect to happen. We have no control over that, as you know. I just didn't want you to get the wrong impression about, thinking it was going to go beyond that. That's all. Sorry, Paul.
Yeah, no, it's all right. And look, as a company and as individuals, we don't advocate for landfill. That's in most regards, we're an alternative to landfill. I understand you don't like what we do as an alternative, but we commit to do it well and beyond what we're required to do by our regulators. We do that. We do that as it relates to our ash. We work very hard to make sure that the ash that goes to a landfill is in a form that is stable over time and won't represent a hazard to people living near it. And that is our commitment. We do spend more money than we would need to meet our environmental controls. We go beyond the simplest aspect of that.
I just want to jump in with you on you, Paul, real quick about that, because we have no trust in the regulating agencies that have put these levels that you are exceeding or falling within the boundaries of. We have no trust in those agencies. We have no trust in the people who have been doing these studies. Zero trust. So for you to cite them, it doesn't really help in this regard, because we have, if there was a benchmark as to what is a better way to conduct a study, or what would be a better way to figure out how much poison you want to put in somebody's body, then maybe we could have this discussion. But we have no trust in those agencies that govern, that are supposed to have the interests of the community at heart. We have no trust in those agencies. They have not shown up for us. They continue to not show up for us. So listen, I don't know. It really just doesn't matter that you're falling within their guidelines, because that still doesn't fall within ours.
I understand what you're saying.
So I just want to just go back to my original point. My basic point was that this community has been putting their life on the line. We have no choice but to put our life on the line. We do not know how this is affecting our reproductive health. We do not know how this is affecting us as far as whether we will eventually get some type of cancer or any other effects. There's a high incidence of asthma, eczema, things like that, and cancer in this community. We have known fact that we had a cancer cluster in the elementary school. We had testing done in that elementary school. And like I said, we have no trust in the folks that conducted that study. And we also know that the limitations of that study was that it was done in 1 day or 2 days. And also it was based on the funding from our school district. You know, I don't know what the school district's budget is right off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure there's some people here that could tell you, but I'm pretty sure your budget is higher than our school budget. The town of Brookhaven as well. Nobody that is actually profiting off of this landfill is putting an honest or earnest effort into making sure that we are safe and that our concerns are being met. And sometimes, well, not sometimes, all the time, it's not about whether you are doing a thing or not. It's about how the community feels. And the community feels like you are not supporting us at all. You are just out here gaining while we are dying. So what we need from you is a partnership to lean on the town, lean on the DEC and all the other supposed stakeholders in this waste crisis that we are living with, and make sure that it ends, that there's a system in place so that it doesn't happen again and it doesn't happen someplace else. So that's what we need from you. We also understand that COVANTA is worldwide and you do business differently in different communities.
Well, I don't know what you mean by that, but I hope that
well, what I mean by that is in the United States, our like you said our agencies that govern how much toxins are allowed in somebody's body is different than what they allow in Europe, Germany, and those types of things. So COVANTA functions differently.
No, what I tried to show you was that we function the same.
And I don't agree with that.
That slide well enough, I apologize. But I tried to show you that our facilities operating on Long Island operate as well as our facilities elsewhere.
Well, I mean, we can go into a debate about that, but we could also allow the next person to go. But we can come back to that if you do have some information that is different from the information that I know. Please share it. But what I'm saying is that is not true. That is absolutely not true.
It was in the slides that I showed you.
Use English as the main language. Press the return key.
So basically, like I said, the question is, are you going to help remediate North Belport and the surrounding communities?
I don't know that we have any idea what I know you don't trust the state regulators, but they are the entity that we have to operate through. And if they were to find that there was something wrong with the way the landfill had been run or was being closed, they would come back to the participants in the use of that facility to try and figure out who contributed to the problem. And in that sense, the way that system works, we are part of the community of people who have used that facility, and we would all share responsibility
exactly
for remediation.
I'm not going to hold up everybody's time, but we do know that there's lawsuits out pending because there's accusations of people who have witnessed the fact that the way that you're handling business is not within the regulations. But we're going to move on from that. I mean, if you want to respond to it, that's fine. But that is, documented that there's an outstanding lawsuit against your company. So Michelle, I'm good to move on.
All right, thank you, Monique. Our next question is going to be coming from Gabrielle, who is with the Global Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you for our guests today for meeting with us. My question pertains to keeping in mind that the landfill is going to be closing in a few years. I'm interested in what are some of the investments to waste transfer station expansions that COVANTA is involved in, and how do you plan on working with, neighboring communities, i.e. community partnerships? What are your relationships with communities receiving Long Island ash or any ash from any of your facilities for that matter? And will they receive any benefits or financial compensation for receiving your ash?
First of all, I just want to make clear, I mean, we are a customer of the landfill, and so we pay for disposal of ash. So we don't have anything to do with the business of the landfill as it closes and transitions, and people have to find other ways to deal with that waste. So we, like other people using the landfill, will have to find other ways to dispose of our ash. And that's not a profit-making enterprise for us, that's a cost of our doing our business. And I don't know, Rick, if you can even speak to what your thinking is at this stage as to how you'll handle that for the future. I don't know that you've even gotten there yet.
No, there's a lot of factors that enter into that, but at this point, one would think that it would be off-island disposal of the ash. But certainly we're going to be looking at in the near future, but that seems to be the only alternative with Brookhaven closing.
Right, thank you. So then that just leaves like my other questions. How do you plan on in the future working with local communities that have to deal with either being in the vicinity of one of your waste to energy facilities or in the receiving end of your ash? And do you have any other kind of relationships with communities like this? Have you ever reached out to any other communities? Have you ever had a meeting like this with other community members?
Certainly.
Yeah.
All the time.
Okay, so how are you going to commit to building more relationships? How are you going to continue partnering with communities so that they understand what's going on and so that you understand what's really happening, that people are getting sick, they have no choice but to live near these things? And would you want to live next to an Asheville? Would you want to live next to one of your facilities? What would you want a relationship with a multi-billion corporation to be like if you live next to one of your waste to energy facilities?
I think we have operated with an openness and a willingness to meet with and enter into dialogue with people in all of our communities. And, I personally lived in a community that was serviced by one of these facilities well before I knew anything really about the industry, and was happy to raise my kids there. And I know other people would feel differently, but we have been trying to engage our communities for years now. This is nothing new.
Yeah. And we do, Paul. Each of the towns in which we operate on the island, we do have active meetings with the local communities. Huntington, Hempstead, Islip, and Babylon.
And how long has your ash been going to Brookhaven? And how many times have you met with members from Brookhaven?
I'm not exactly sure how long our ash has been going to the Brookhaven landfill, but the town of Brookhaven owns the Brookhaven landfill. So, yeah, so, you know, in the communities that we operate, we are very, you know, we have reached out locally to the communities. We
Okay.
don't own the landfill.
Right, okay, I understand that. The last part of my question, will any of these communities receive any benefits, financial compensation, as Monique mentioned before, any sort of investment from you in terms of remediation?
You know, the question of remediation, I mean, first of all, you know, as I said, if for example, the New York DEC were to find that remediation was called for, that starts in a whole process for going back to users of the facility to find compensation for that kind of work. If they find that through the normal process of closure, it's adequately isolated from the environment, then that doesn't happen. And so, you know, we have committed financial resources to the communities where we operate. We're ready if indeed someone who operates a landfill where we've disposed of our ash is found to have operated it improperly, to participate in the process of seeing that things are done correctly. But we take very seriously our obligation to deliver ash in a satisfactory form that is by the testing that's done protective of the environment. And that's our major commitment to a facility like the Babylon landfill.
Okay, I'm not gonna take up any more time, but thank you all.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Our next question, now we are open to community members to ask the questions. As long as you were placed on staff, we're gonna go based off of that list right there. And the first person up is going to be Jennifer Green.
Hi, how's my sound? Can you hear me okay? So hello, I am a community resident, and before I lived on Long Island, I used to work next to a landfill in a recycling center. I'm also someone who is concerned about climate change, and today's presentation brought up greenhouse gases. Now, when I visited COVANTA's website, I saw that you have a webpage on climate change, which makes the following remarkable statement, quote, "By avoiding emissions that would have otherwise occurred, EFW, energy from waste, is the only major source of electricity that reduces greenhouse gas emissions. In this way, EFW facilities play an important role in the climate change solution." But I have to say, COVANTA's way of avoiding those emissions from natural sources like paper, food, and yard debris is not the only way we can avoid those emissions. And it's so misleading of you to show us a slide like you did. We have other options for keeping those things out of landfills: composting and recycling, and MRBT, which is materials recovery and biological treatment. I've really had a crash course in the last week or so on learning up about these things. So I've read that when you count both biogenic and non-biogenic GHGs, as the IPCC says you should, incinerators emit more CO2 per unit of electricity generated than coal-fired or oil-fired power plants. So I think it's terribly misleading what COVANTA's webpage currently says about COVANTA incinerators playing an important role in the climate change solution. I do think your company needs to tell the truth. I do think it would be great if COVANTA would commit to giving back funds to these communities, funds to develop programs that increase material recovery rates through recycling and composting. Then COVANTA could claim to be climate friendly and taking seriously your obligations.
So I stand by what that webpage says. It's based in science. It's based in sound greenhouse gas accounting. I will not apologize for it. It's completely accurate. As a matter of discussion, are there other ways to reduce the biodegradable materials going to landfill? Yes, there are. Recycling is a very obvious one. And the combination of recycling and energy recovery has been the policy of choice in European Union countries for greenhouse gas mitigation. That's why Germany is 64%, 65% recycling and the balance energy recovery. It is a comprehensive approach to greenhouse gas mitigation and driving down biodegradable materials in landfill.
Sir, it's misleading. It's an accounting trick, and your information is deliberately misleading people by implying that that there aren't other ways.
I categorically reject that. It is best science, and happy to go into any in-depth discussion with you like.
Isn't it true that there are other ways to avoid emissions than EFW?
That to avoid methane emissions, yes, recycling is a key element to that.
Yeah.
And a country like Germany chooses to do both.
So if you'd like some help editing your webpage, I would be happy to assist because I'm good at
doesn't-
that.
It doesn't need editing. It's completely accurate in that regard.
I guess I'm not going to get an answer to my question.
You got it.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
And next up, we have Avana.
Hi, everybody. Thank you to our guest for coming and for this really important discussion, which is long overdue. There are just some things that I have to say because it seems like there is some type of confusion in some ways. We are speaking at BLARG from the perspective of a landfill affected community, right? And I feel like it's important to say, especially just to Mr. Gilman, that, you know, all of the discussion we're having about what our experience of the landfill is, as opposed to what you say your experience of our landfill is. There's a big disconnect there because we hear everything is perfect, everything is fine. What our experience is, and this is also based on science, based on the CDC, I'm not sure whether you're aware, North Bellport, the area adjacent to the Brookhaven landfill, where COVANTA ash has been dumped for the past 30 years, has the lowest life expectancy in all of Long Island, according to the CDC 2018. There is a problem, and I'm not sure whether you are aware of it, because clearly everything that you say about the outreach that has been done, it's all being done to the town of Brookhaven. You say there are fees being paid, that's all going to the town of Brookhaven. But we have a real issue as a landfill affected community because the town of Brookhaven has not been looking out for the best interest of those of us that live around the landfill for half a century. And there is a track record of the fact that folks that operate and use landfills and operate and use the waste transfer stations, oftentimes for the past about 20 years or so, have to pay host benefit agreements to the particular host community that host that landfill or host that waste transfer station. We are, yes, right? You are aware of that. What we're saying is that we, not the town of Brookhaven, is the host community that has been impacted. We are the host community that feels the impacts on our life expectancy. When research is done, it should be done here. When discussions are had with the community, you should come here. You cannot go to the town of Brookhaven and say we've done outreach around the Brookhaven landfill. You have not. When I look at the list of the soup kitchens, the this and that, none of that impacts Yaphank, Medford, North Bellport, Bellport Village. When I look at the jobs being offered there by your company, those are not jobs, 86 of them, small as it is. Those are not jobs that are being brought here to us. You are aware, of course, that there is a lawsuit out about the disposal of ash against the Hempstead plant and the ash which is being brought to the Brookhaven landfill. That is the Fahey et al. Versus your company lawsuit. This lawsuit allegedly claims that Covanta Hempstead deposited toxic ash into the Brookhaven landfill from the years 2006 until 2015. Now, this is an ongoing lawsuit. I'm sure you cannot speak about it. But when you say that we should just trust, we have evidence with our life expectancy, with this lawsuit, with the Frank P. Long School, with our own experiences. You can look at the EPA EJ indicators for particulate matter, for dust within North Bellport. Sir, it's all very high. All of these things are our experience and are backed up by facts. So one of the questions that I'm asking you is, if you had this experience, particularly in regard to the lawsuit, what type of outreach would you expect from Covanta? How should we be reassured? What type of a relationship do you think would be important to kind of address this history that I've just outlined in a thumbnail? I guess the first question is, are you aware of this history? And given this history, what does it mean to be a good neighbor?
Let me start by saying my discussion about our being proud of our performance environmentally at our facilities was not meant to suggest to you that we were speaking about the facility, the landfill, that you are organized about in your community. I was just speaking to our performance. Now, our obligation for your facility and its performance is to deliver our ash to that facility in the best condition we can. And we were happy to share with the Citizens Advisory Group that was engaged in the recommendations associated with the future of the Brookhaven landfill, the records of our testing on our ash for, I think we gave back 10 years for those records. And so, you know, we are very open about the condition of that ash and our what has gone to the landfill and any landfill that we send it to. I can't speak to the condition of the landfill more generally. I can certainly, you know, understand your group's concern and engagement and advocacy on it.
Okay.
And we're here to talk tonight because we know that, you know, you are energized about this.
Okay, so a few things that I would just like to make clear, and I'm hoping that this will be a productive discussion. The first thing is the effort to kind of say that your role in the operation of the Brookhaven landfill is only as a place to kind of deposit ash does not reflect the reality of how waste has worked within Long Island for the past 50 years, right? We have documents and records from the town of Brookhaven speaking about basically the fact that your company's existence has basically allowed them to set the car on autopilot and just allow it to ride for the past umpteen years. We do not have good recycling rates within the town of Brookhaven. We do not have a reasonable plan to kind of deal with waste proactively, particularly because we are an island and have a sole source aquifer. We do not have a progressive, sustainable, frankly, rational plan. And when we look at the history of how the town of Brookhaven has been allowed to skate by, making a mess of our environment, unfortunately, sir, they always point to you. They always say, as long as COVANTA is here, we send them all of the waste, we get back the ash and the money, and we are addicted to that money. So unfortunately, the relationship that has been created between you and the town of Brookhaven specifically has really been an obstacle for the work that needed to be done for decades that other communities have done in terms of trying to reasonably address the waste. So it is it's not okay to pretend that you are just a cog in a wheel, a bit player here. Because the reality is your company has been steering the ship and has steered us, I have to say it, into the rocks. Into the rocks. We are not okay living around the Brookhaven landfill. It is a blight, it's costing human lives, and it really needs to stop. So I would very much encourage you, Mr. Gilman, Mr. Sandner, come in on the ground floor on trying to make it right. Enough with the washing of the hands, enough with the passing the buck. The landfill is gonna close and it will have to be cleaned up. And when I talk about clean up, we're talking about the plume, we're talking about the air quality, and we're talking about the community. Home prices gone down, cancer risk gone up. This is the reality for landfills. There are risks attached with it. And we are willing to work with the town and COVANTA and the DEC and whoever else in creating a reasonable plan cooperatively to make some of this right. But as long as you all keep on washing your hands, passing the buck, those days are over. We need to get on the same page and start to move forward, because this is what time it is.
Yeah, I hope you think our coming here today isn't about washing our hands or passing the buck. We're here, we're listening. We work in many of our communities with groups who want to move their waste disposal into more sustainable territory, and we're happy to do that. We're happy to help you all with your own planning and education efforts and the like. If you have a way you want to move forward on that, we're happy to do that.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
Great. I'll see the floor.
Okay.
Good.
All right, next up we have Will with a question.
Hi, I'm Will Ferraro. I previously ran as a candidate in 2019 for Brookhaven Town Supervisor. This issue was probably the #1 issue that I ran on, was one of the reasons I ran, along with recycling. Obviously, these issues go hand in hand. So this is a topic I spent a lot of time speaking with Brookhaven officials on, speaking next to Brookhaven officials on, countering them on, speaking to the community about. And I have to say, kind of jumping off some of Abhina's points about the role that COVANTA has in influencing local governments. Keep in mind, COVANTA is a multinational corporation. COVANTA, from a donation standpoint, contributes hundreds of thousands of dollars per year just to federal candidates alone. And I don't have the number on this, on what's contributed on the state level, but I've done so.
Just so you know, that's not accurate. So
That's not accurate. Okay,
No,
so I'm right now. Are you talking about on the federal level? Covanta Energy Corp donated, and this is actually just for 2017 to 2018, donated $111,500 to federal candidates. Is that incorrect?
what years did you say?
That was just from 3 years ago, and I'm seeing that the number of donations on any given year is above 80,000. So let me go to the most recent cycle.
It's usually, my guess is it would usually be around $60,000 to $80,000.
Right.
The
2020 cycle, 103,000. So this is opensecrets.org. Is this information incorrect?
I don't know whether that combines individual along with the employee political action committee that we have.
This is the Covanta Energy Corp PAC.
But it's not, it's not corporate funding. It's the employee political action committee where we contribute as employees to a political action fund.
Right. That has your name, and I assume has legislative priorities attached to it that would benefit the company in some way, right? I mean, it's not just a bunch of people who got together and decided to use your name for a PAC. I mean, there's a relationship there in terms of.
Exactly. And we advocate for sustainable waste management, and we do so outside of that political process. We do that in terms of testimony that we give in the regulatory setting or in the legislative setting.
Okay, but my point is that Covanta, through both its PAC and I know on the state level, and I don't have these numbers in front of me, but I have personally seen through the reports that I've sifted through, at least tens of thousands of dollars to Long Island officials in general, whether it's town supervisors. I know that there was one year that Ed Romaine, Supervisor Brookhaven, took a couple of $1,000 in donations from Covanta. My point being is that whether it's a company or as a PAC on the federal and state level, there's a lot of money that's donated from Covanta or using the Covanta name through its PAC, just like any labor union would or any other organization, in the interest of promoting policies that would, I assume, be beneficial to Covanta or that Covanta would like to see implemented. Am I correct in saying that?
We support sustainable waste management and all of the attendant sorts of policies that go.
Okay, no, all right, noted. So my question, that leads into my question, right? So Brookhaven, for example, we were speaking earlier about, throughout this call, you've been speaking about how, we're all in agreement. We want to see a zero waste future. We want to see more recycling. We want to see composting. We want to see energy solutions, this sort of thing. From the perspective of a company that does a lot of business with the town of Brookhaven, considering where many municipalities around the country are moving and where Brookhaven should be moving. Brookhaven, I believe, is the size of Miami in terms of population, the largest town in Suffolk County. Brookhaven as a town has done almost nothing to move the ball forward in terms of recycling, in terms and that's not all Brookhaven's fault. A lot of that is just the recycling market. But our recycling program has gotten worse over time. Also, recycling, obviously, because of some of the complications involved in it, a lot of recyclable goods wind up in landfills. right? And it depends on the recyclable item that you're talking about. Like, for instance, a lot of plastic winds up back in landfills. So this is an issue with recycling in general, but in terms of zero waste, in terms of composting, Brookhaven has not put forth any kind of plan for a post landfill future, as it has been noted throughout this call, that would seem to indicate a town that is serious about making large jumps forward, large leaps forward towards or as close as possible to a zero waste future. So with that in mind, if COVANTA has an interest in seeing towns, municipalities, and states, et cetera, move towards that future, what is COVANTA doing to ensure that, or perhaps its PAC is doing to ensure that when it makes donations, what is it asking back from candidates? What are you looking for? What kind of conversations are you having with municipal officials to express this interest in moving towards zero waste? Because from my standpoint, I don't see that COVANTA has any financial motivation to do that, right? Your waste management, if we're moving away from waste, I don't see that there's a financial incentive for COVANTA to see towns move away from ash fills or move away from any of that. So maybe I'm wrong on that. I'm certainly no expert in what COVANTA does, but I've seen enough to be very cynical.
Yeah.
So I'd like to hear from you. First, is COVANTA taking an active role, not just in Brookhaven, but other municipalities across Long Island in, lobbying and pushing for them to have robust policies planning for post-landfill futures? And second, if it were to do that, would it be financially beneficial for the company, or would the company stand to make more profit with business as usual? That's my question.
Well, I mean, for companies and for communities that wish to be zero landfill, they often are looking to bridge the gap between the reduce, reuse, and recycle with energy recovery. So we are often asked to be part of a company or a community's effort to go zero landfill. Now that's separate and distinct from zero waste. I understand that. But that is for those who are focused on a zero landfill policy as a step in the journey to zero waste. We're often asked, what can we do to help? And that's reflected in our company. We have a fairly large group that helps corporations and commercial enterprises, industry, commercial, to, we like to think, sort of climb the waste hierarchy, put more of their waste into energy recovery, into recycling and the like, consult on ways to reduce waste or produce no waste. So that's an aspect of our business. When I say, we are in the, what we advocate is sustainable waste management. We very much believe in that waste hierarchy we were talking about before, and the importance to go from the top, right? That is our business, and that is our interest. So we would say, we're part of the discussion of zero landfill. We're not the entire thing. We work in lots of communities to promote recycling, to support groups that want to advocate for zero waste, because it all, has to be integrated to make it work.
Well, are you satisfied with what you're seeing from Brookhaven Town in terms of long-term planning around its waste?
Well, I don't think, probably the truth is you can't be satisfied really with any one community.
Is that true though? Because I feel like there are a lot of communities, I mean, New York City being one of them, that actually is quite aggressive. And I mean, you could go back decades all the way to San Francisco, you know, prioritizing a zero waste future and in embedding these habits into I mean, there's certainly examples. I would not say by any stretch that Brookhaven is the equivalent, no better, no worse than other municipalities. I would say that might be true for Suffolk County, and yet, you know, most of the ash seems to come back here to Brookhaven. So we're always right back to this town.
Yeah.
And of course, this is the town we're speaking of. So from the perspective of a company that I'm sure looks towards the future and how a town is doing long-term planning around its waste, are you satisfied again with how Brookhaven is planning for the future, even in comparison to other towns? And again, go back to the question, if Brookhaven were to get bold with its policy making, and Suffolk County as a region, I should say, because there is a partnership aspect, would that be profitable for Covanta to see towns get away from burning their trash, moving towards zero waste? Would that not hurt your bottom line as a company?
Oh, I would imagine in the end point, it certainly would, but you know, people, you know, when you think that the U.S. currently is landfilling over 60% of its waste and doing energy recovery on 7-8% of it, I don't think that the prospect of having no waste to divert from landfills is a 5 or 10 year problem. So our company is always looking at what are alternative treatments and for the waste stream, for diversion and the like. We spent time looking at technologies like gasification, anaerobic digestion. We operate some composting facilities. So there are any number of technologies that a company like ours is interested in staying on top of and developing as a marketplace develops for them.
Well, I'll end my time by saying this because I want to move on to anyone else who had a question. I'll just end my time by saying this. For a company that's, and it seems by your comments that it's like almost a laissez-faire, like, well, you know, we're not moving away from landfilling anytime soon, and you know, we're not quite worried. This company spends quite a bit of money towards legislative priorities that seemingly would suit its interest, and takes quite an interest in the campaign accounts of our local elected officials who have seemingly done nothing to move this issue forward. And it seems to me that the financial incentive for business as usual in Brookhaven, business as usual meaning continuing to burn trash, continuing to send potentially toxic ash into communities, there is no incentive to move away from that. So I'll yield my time to you.
Yeah, I just have to say, for you to suggest that we're pro landfill and want to keep landfills going is just so alien to us as a company. I don't even know how you get there to think that we're pro landfill.
Well, we're gonna go ahead and move on to our next question, which is gonna be coming from Karim.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Can you hear me okay? So I guess I have like a few part question. And the first part is a question for Mr. Gilman. And it's more of a philosophical question. Do you believe, are you in agreement with the environmental principle of polluter pays?
Certainly.
Okay. So, we've been accepting Covanta's and our ash, all right, but Covanta has transformed this garbage into ash at the Brookhaven landfill. And for decades, there's been a plume into our sole source aquifer. Are you aware of that?
I am not familiar with the data directly. I have heard people say exactly what you've said.
Okay, so this is very alarming because you are the head of sustainability for this, large company, right? And you have a decades-long relationship with the town of Brookhaven, and you're telling me you're not aware of the active plume under the Brookhaven landfill. That's very alarming.
No, it's exactly what I said. I am aware of the statement that there is a plume. I am not personally familiar with the data associated with it.
Is anyone on this call familiar with the data from your team?
Not on this call. We have our
I am not. Yep.
specialist for the region is familiar with it. And in fact, one of the things that we work on all the time is to what degree do we believe any of our materials have contributed to contamination of leachate and the like in landfills where it's disposed of.
Okay, so in the decades
that we work on, yes.
Okay, so in the decades that this plume has been actively dripping into our sole source aquifer in Long Island. Okay, we have a sole source aquifer, the Megathony aquifer. This is something that you can get back to us on about like how your team has been monitoring this, okay? Because for 6 months, I've been asking the Department of Environmental Conservation and the town of Brookhaven for information on the plume. After a 4-month FOIL request, I got back 5 years of D&B reports, which were sent to the town of Brookhaven, which did not test for emerging contaminants like PFAS and PFOA, perfluorinated substances. At the same time, and Ed Romaine told me go to DEC, okay? I go to DEC. DEC first tells me they don't monitor this. They tell me they don't monitor private wells. This is wrong. We had the chief of staff of the Department of Environmental Conservation on our call 2 weeks ago, who told me he wasn't aware of the plume. So there's something really wrong here in this chain of corporate responsibility that goes from a large multinational corporation into our groundwater. So just so that you are aware, I've posted in the chat, today I received Suffolk County Department of Health PFAS letters that they sent to residents who had their private wells tested in 2017. And those letters.
You muted.
Karim, you muted yourself.
I'm not a cat. No. So the letters that I got today in a FOIL from Suffolk County Department of Health were to private owners who had private wells within the plume, okay? And they told them there's not a problem, the data we received shows that your PFOA levels were 0.04 parts per billion, which is less than the EPA 0.07 parts per billion level, okay? But as we all know, New York State has a new drinking water limit of 10 parts per trillion. Okay, so that is above our drinking water standards for these emerging contaminants. Like, you guys should know that. You guys should be telling us that when we ask you. You have a decades-long relationship, ash for trash contract. You're poisoning our water, and I think that. So again,
I will differ with you. I don't think our ash is contributing, especially for that compound. But
can you give me the evidence for that? Do you have leachate testing? Because I have foiled the Department of Health, New York State Department of Health, about this, and they have not given me, although they have leachate testing from the Brookhaven landfill.
We don't have access to the leachate testing.
How can you be so confident?
Landfill, but we have access to leachate testing elsewhere, and that's why we have confidence.
I don't live elsewhere. I live right here. All right,
and that's why that answer would not make you feel comfortable.
So make me feel comfortable. Work with us, all right, Mr. Gilman. You sit on. You're not Joe Schmo, right? You are on the Climate Protection Act committees, and here we are. We're talking about very concrete things. New York State Department of Health is actually testing the leachate. DC has tested this, although they won't give it to me. The leachate from the landfill, which is predominantly your ash. And
Well, yeah, why do you say that's predominantly our ash, Karen?
I mean, because it's coming from the ash it's ash and C&D.
Yeah, there's, you seem to be completely, and with all due respect, there is other material going into that.
Okay, so let's test both. Let's dig into it.
No, I just want to make it
into
clear. I just want to make it clear. That's all.
This is about the chain of corporate responsibility. And here you are telling me to trust you about all these things, but you cannot actually follow the chain to tell me with any degree of confidence that you are not polluting our groundwater. Anyway, that's the first thing. Second question, do you have any other communities that you dump your ash to that are in such close proximity to people? And are they above aquifers? And are those landfills with a known leak?
We dispose of our ash in a number of different landfills. Some are immediately on the property of the facilities that we operate, and some are at distance. All various different.
But what one would be the most similar to ours? Like, which one would be the most similar to so many people?
I don't know off the top of my head, but my guess would be a landfill for disposal in Massachusetts or in
which one? The Wheelberator? Because that's not close to the same number of people.
No, I can't speak for the Wheelberator company. I don't have any idea of their circumstance.
So does Mr. Sander know this? I mean, what's the comparable landfill for us?
No, I don't. We don't, our business is not in running landfills. Yes, I understand your question and I understand your concern, and I thoroughly respect what you're saying. And but again, not that familiar with the landfill business.
So who can we talk to that's familiar with our chain of corporate responsibility in terms of contaminants? Because at the end, the question is who's going to pay? Because we know that this is a problem. I'm showing you on the chat private wells with elevated levels downstream of our plume. So someone's going to pay. The question is who?
Well, I'm happy to talk to you further about the questions of leachate and leachate associated with ash versus municipal solid waste, et cetera. And we can talk more about that if you like. I mean, we can drill down into that as far as
I want to test our ash. I want to test our leachate in our, we have this, everyone talks about science. Let's do science. But I don't know why this is 30 years of plume and we don't have this science. This should be on the website. I don't know why I have to wait 6 months after a FOIL to get incomplete information. I mean, it's like anyway, I'll let other people ask questions, but we need to do better.
Okay, Barbara, I believe you're raising your hand, but we put you on stack, so you'll be up soon, don't worry. I just want to remind everyone of the time and try and make the questions as straightforward and to the point as possible, because we do have a few more people on stack and we want to make sure everybody gets a turn. However, stating that, Colleen, you are up next.
Hi, my name is Colleen Callan. I'm a producer of a documentary about the landfill. I've been working on research about it for many, many years. I know you say that your ash is perfectly safe. I have a sample analysis report. This is from Ogden Martin. You used to be called Ogden Martin in Huntington. And this is dated 1999. And it talks about the ash, 300 pounds of ash with gamma spectrochrome. It says nuclides, thorium, and uranium, and the activity, 25.2 picocuries per gram, 1.8 picocuries per gram, and this is from the Ogden Martin facility. Now, these are long-lived radioactive radionuclides. These are not things that are going to go away overnight. So I have dozens of these reports, copies of these reports, dozens of them. And we also have reports that show that truckloads of radioactive metal called Grizzly was shipped from Gershow back to Ogden Martin because it set off their radiation detector. So Ogden Martin got their own radiation detector, a Bicron micrometer, and they put it in. Because it was going off on a regular basis, they raised the background level 5 times without anybody's permission, or I don't know who gave them the idea to do that. But then, of course, after it was raised so high, less alarms went off. So when you talk about how safe the ash is that goes into the landfill, this contaminated fly ash was going into Brookhaven landfill since as far back as 1999. So how do you explain, that would explain the radon in a lot of the homes surrounding the landfill, because thorium and uranium and radium will decay into radon and polonium and other toxic radiological isotopes. So how can you reconcile what you say, that you've never had ash tested that was any issue? And I have dozens of reports that show that it actually did come from Ogden Martin, which was, it's now Covanta, but it was then Ogden Martin. So do you have any explanation for any of this?
If you can either email me or mail me the papers that you have, I'd like to see them. I have not seen detailed reports like that before, but I'm happy to take a look at them and respond directly to you. I can't, not knowing what you got or knowing the background that you say is there is that story. I'm just not familiar with it. So
Okay, I'd be happy to email some information to you.
If you would, please.
Okay.
Awesome, thank you. We're gonna go ahead and now move on to Lauren's question.
Hi guys, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm going to be quick. I'm a homeowner. I live in Yaphank. I purchased a home here about 9 years ago. Prior to purchasing a home, I did research the closing of the landfill. That was a factor in my purchase. However, I'm learning now it's not closing. That being said, I'm involved in BLARG. I am thankful for them, and I'm in this community. My question to you is, sir, you have stated that you have a commitment to the community and you do want to work with us, and acknowledging that we are all cogs in this wheel. I would ask now that you commit to further monitoring of your ash in all of your sites, air quality, water quality, and the state of your ash when it is leaving and being received at the facilities in Brookhaven. And I would also ask for your commitment to urge the town of Brookhaven and the DAC to increase their monitoring. There's a lot of talk about what is hazardous and what is not, but how can we assess what is happening to our community without the proper monitoring?
Right. I'll commit to you that I'll engage the folks who are operating the landfill and ask about access to their testing, and certainly will ask about whether or not they're willing to share it. I didn't realize that that you're having to seek Freedom of Information Act requests in order to.
I also ask that you have monitoring at your facilities as well and share that data with us. Okay, can you share that with a third party?
We do. I mean,
okay. Is there a third party monitoring that? And do you only do air? Do you also do the land quality and the effect on the water?
Yes, I mean, we do surface water containment, et cetera, and testing of our containment ponds and the like. Yes.
Okay, is there a third party monitoring your testing, or is it only you? And then you report to the DEC?
One that you find unacceptable, the DEC.
That's the alleged third party.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Lauren. Next up is Dennis.
Okay, I just have a simple question.
Do you know if ash produces particulate matter, and if so, how does it affect people?
Well, in my presentation, I gave you some information we did with the Massachusetts Department of Environment to look to see if ash, as it's being disposed of at a landfill, created what are referred to as fugitive emissions, emissions of particulate matter. And we've done that work with the Massachusetts Department of Environment. We've done a similar sort of study with the Hawaii Department of Environment. And because the ash is disposed of is typically
that's something that is on the call.
Moist, it does not really present a fugitive emissions issue associated with that disposal. So that was the slide that was in my presentation. I don't know if that answers your question, but I tried to address that in my presentation.
Dennis?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. All right, next up we have Barbara L.
Hi, everybody. I was just wanting one question, Paul. Does your company, COVANTA, have a contract or a relationship with the Brookhaven National Lab?
I don't believe, well, are they a customer?
Just a relationship. Do you have a professional relationship and or a contract with the Brookhaven National Lab? And I'll add to that Battelle Industries.
I'm sorry, what was the last one, Barbara?
Battelle Industries.
Okay, Paul, I don't believe we have a contract with either of those.
Yeah, and so I personally served on the outside advisory group of Brookhaven National Laboratory more than 20 years ago, I have to imagine. And I was an employee of the Oak Ridge Associated Universities of
Tennessee,
and ran a center at Oak Ridge National Laboratory for the Oak Ridge Associated Universities. And one of the managing partners for Oak Ridge National Laboratory was Battelle Memorial Institute, along with 7 universities,
right.
The Oak Ridge Associated Universities.
Was that in the 1960s?
No, it was in 2005, 6, 7.
Okay, and the last thing I'm just going to say briefly, I don't want to hog the time here. I looked COVANTA up, and obviously you're all over the world, but you are intimately involved in coal and in fracking. And
No,
I'd
we're
like
not.
to,
No, ma'am. No,
not at all.
0.
In coal?
No.
0.
Not in the fracking industry?
No.
Nope.
Oil and gas?
No.
Nope.
Okay, that's all I have to ask. Thank you.
Okay, up next we have Karen Blummer and then one more.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi all. Thank you once again. I'll join others for thanking you for appearing. I have 2 questions. The first one is really to Rick Sandner. He has been part of the Long Island Solid Waste Leadership Council. Do you remember that, Rick?
I do. I'm getting, my memory's starting to go, but I do remember that. It's not too long ago.
Well, since the report, I think, got lost along the way with COVID. And they have issued a draft report, which I don't think is available to the public, but I do have a copy. And I noticed that you co-chaired the leadership group divided was public, municipal, some of the leaders of part of the 16 LPUs, the local planning units for waste on Long Island. And they divided this into 7 types of waste. And you co-chaired the ash management with Chris Andrade from the town of Brookhaven. Now, I noticed on your recommendations, there was quite a bit of suggesting baseline testing, biannual ash testing, ensuring quality for various purposes. Now, in your discussions with Mr. Andrade, I mean, did anything come up with the plumes that were coming from the ash spill?
You know, Karen, I don't recall, you know, it's been a while, right? It's been months. I apologize. I have to go back and check my notes. Nothing jumps out at me right now. I'm not saying it did or it didn't. I don't have the, you know, date in front of me right now.
Okay, so you don't remember.
I don't remember that, discussing that.
Okay, I was just wondering because
Yeah.
it seems since you work so closely with him, and he is certainly apprised of all that data of the plume, and talking about Paul National Labs. I worked at Brookhaven Lab in the 1980s, which may have been before you were delivering ash, but we did a project with Jim Heil, who was head of the landfill then, and the plume was quite potent even then. So just so you'll know going forward. My other question is, a number of us have been gathering a consortium of from varying interests, expertise, etc., for what we're going to probably call TALS, taking a lead on zero waste. And we're already working with some of the governmental waste people, a few from the Leadership Council. We're working with a bit of from the legislature. This is very early since they're in the budget period, so we haven't had big conversations yet. And we hope to, you know, have input, because the Leadership Council only had 7 areas of waste. We would really like to create an 8th one and just call it zero waste as a way of working toward goals with very concrete results. And I was wondering, will COVANTA, would you be part of that consortium, depending on where we're going?
I would think so, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And all right, well, that would be good to hear. I'm not sure what that would look like yet, but we're working on that. So thank you. That would be good.
Yeah, Karen, we're eager to participate in any and everything with that, you know, Long Island Planning Council, you know, just to try to be proactive in how we're reacting to things like that. We hear you.
Yeah, because we're sending around the question, should we reactivate that Leadership Council?
I think we should, frankly, but that's just my opinion.
And really, it's only been a public and private recommendations, you know, from people who serve to benefit really from some of these recommendations. We haven't discussed this yet with a fine-tooth comb. So we're really hoping that something that, you know, presents more than for the public trust, you know, that there be a third voice that might be established in that 8th group to, you know, to give more of a objective view that, okay, all right, good,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you, Karen. So we have our last and final stack before we close out, and that's going to be from Amos 1.
You're on mute, Amos.
Just two quick questions for Rich and Paul. Stepping back from this and hearing this tonight, what is your emotional response when you hear the cry of the community about the pollution and the waste that has been dumped there? You guys seem like wonderful human beings, and I know you're trying to do a great job and all of that. But when I hear the community talk, you know, and I don't live that far away, and I've been there and I've smelt it and I know what they're dealing with. My emotional response is to be upset and to be, you know, really concerned about the people. And I know, I'm sure you're sharing that. And if I was part of a corporation and a business, and this was one of the end results, and I'm sure when you got into it, you weren't envisioning all of this, but you have people whose water supply, you know, is tainted, who, as Sabina said, you know, their low life expectancy, you know, kids in schools that are suffering. You know, emotionally, I would be very conflicted, upset, you know, as a human being, you know. So I don't know, Rich and Paul, if you have any feedback on that or any, you know, reaction to that.
Let me just say, whenever I speak with a group like this, I like to remind myself and my colleagues that imagine if, you know, you were a member of this group and your home was in the community and you were faced with the issues and problems that these folks are. You'd be upset, you'd be engaged, you'd be, you know, probably not trusting a bunch of people too. So I come with it saying, I am not surprised by the engagement of this group. I mean, it's the energy of people who want their community to be a great place to live in. They moved there, they thought it was, and maybe they're having doubts now. I know you probably think as a company and doing what we do, it's the last thing that we could possibly think. But, you know, one of the reasons our plants are popular in a place like Florida is because people started to worry about landfills in areas with high water tables. And so communities started to say, is there an alternative approach for us? And they chose to go down the path of looking at, instead of landfilling municipal solid waste, doing energy recovery, and then necessarily landfilling the residual ash. So, you know, we operate in communities that are concerned about things like landfills. And I know a number of people on this call don't view us as an alternative. They view us as no better than a landfill, but it is, you know, as a company, we decided, you know, we have to engage our communities, and, you know, we need to cast our net more broadly than just our immediate operating communities. And we have been trying to do that. But as big of a company as you may think we are, you know, we don't have all of the resources in the world, and that's why coming to talk with you all tonight educates us, certainly helps us understand the particulars of your concerns, access to data and that sort of thing. And perhaps we can help in that regard. I don't know how, but we'll give it a shot.
Yeah, well said, Paul.
Okay, so now our next question is going to be from Dr. Georgette Greerke.
Good evening. I have more of a comment in regards to our sense of community. We do already have a great community, and that's what pains us the most. Our sense of community. I moved in this community 20 years ago, and to leave a close-knit community as a kid, leaving your parents' house, to move as an adult to another community and find this sense of community. And for the first time ever, for me to have to consider moving because of my health devastated me. To think that I'm gonna have to leave after 20 years of all the people that's on this call, that we know each other, we love each other, we help each other in the time of crisis, we care about our neighbors, the things that we've gone through, the pandemic, the national, things that have happened, the sense of community that as an adult that I've been able to find here, the battles that we fight, and then I would have to leave it, seriously consider leaving it. And the fact that as a Black woman, and we know that Long Island is one of the most segregated places, it's not even like I have a choice of where I can live because of segregation and prices. So we don't even have a lot of choices. So I would have to consider and move where on Long Island. So taking all of that into consideration, it's not fair for me to think that I would have to leave all of this that I built up as a community because of my health. I want to have a lung, I want to have a breast. I don't know, what would I be giving up? A lot. It's not just the house, it's everything that I have built and worked towards and forged as a community. And it's not fair that I would have to think of all of that. So we need to think about what is at stake here. And it's more than just a house. It's everything, and it's not fair. We don't have choices here on Long Island, okay? So it's not fair. We have real challenge and barriers that is against our will, and we are the underdogs here. And all we have is the solidarity with one another. We're the underdogs. We're fighting levels of government, big business, and we have one another, the people power, and we're going to use it. So that's all we have. And we want you to understand that we are the victims. We have been done wrong here. And it's unfair that we have to continue to fight a representation that's supposed to be representing us, and they're not. They have stonewalled us. They have not let us in on all levels. Every person that we get on these calls, we hear the same thing. We don't know, we're going to get back to you. That's unacceptable. A lot of us still have problems with health insurance, life insurance, pensions. All of these people on these calls have that. Some people in our communities don't have it. We're strapped with student loans and everything else. How dare them come on this phone and be not prepared to speak with us? It's unacceptable. Everybody needs to get it together when they come speak with us. Thank you very much.
Well, if what you were saying was that we came on the phone unprepared to speak to you, I'm sorry, I don't know what I could have done more of.
So, I mean, this is heavy. The community wants answers. They're not ultimately getting the answers that they're asking for. They're asking for remediation. It's not being stated that, yes, the remediation is going to be there. They're asking you guys, they're bringing up zero waste, but zero waste to landfill is not zero waste. It's just kind of a washing way of doing it. So I don't want to speak for anyone, but those are just 5% of the answers that weren't answered tonight. But on that note, there's no more staff. The final person is going to go before closing, and that's going to be Mike Ewell.
Hi, Paul. Quick question here. You had answered the question earlier about any contracts with Brookhaven National Lab. I'm wondering if I can broaden that question. Just does COVANTA on Long Island, any of the 4 facilities, have any federal contracts of any sort? I know some of your facilities, maybe not on Long Island, I'm not sure, are burning pharmaceuticals that are collected. I don't know if that's a Department of Justice contract or not. So are there any federal contracts that you're aware of?
Oh, I do believe that actually at the request of the Drug Enforcement Agency, last year we created a contract for them for disposal of of opioids that they had collected in household drug pickup days. And that's to facilitate their disposal of those drugs. I'm not aware of, I think no direct contract. I know for a while that at least the National Park Service was a customer. That's a federal agency.
Yeah, Paul, I should indicate too, and Mike, it's, several of our facilities, we don't control the waste stream, right? Whereas Huntington controls its own waste stream, Islip controls its own waste stream, as does Babylon. So as it relates to Hempstead, no, not that I'm aware of, except for what Paul mentioned.
Yeah, so where we operate a facility for communities, we don't control the contracts for waste in. So the 3 examples that Rick gave, Hempstead's different matter. We can speak to the contracts there, but I was speaking. Park Service was for a facility in Virginia, for example. So and the Drug Enforcement Agency for the collection of household prescription drugs, that is a nationwide contract.
Thank you.
Sure.
Right, I'm gonna now hand the floor over back to Ms. Hannah to go ahead and close us out.
Okay. Before we do that, we do know that the Babylon Asheville is closing. So who is going to be accepting that ash? And that ash comes from Hempstead, Huntington, and the Babylon plants. Do you have just a second to answer that question for me before I close out?
Sure. So the Babylon landfill collects or receives only Babylon facility ash, as far as I know. And I'm not sure when that's slated for closure. I'm just not. But I can tell you, it only accepts our Babylon facility ash.
Oh, okay, thank you. So you don't think it's gonna close before 2024, before you rescind, before the partnership with Town of Brookhaven is, do you?
Yeah, I'm not trying to be evasive. I just, again, we don't operate it, we don't own it. It's really the Town of Babylon, so I can't answer. I don't know what their intentions are.
Okay, well, I hope their intentions are not for you to burn their garbage and it comes to Brookhaven. I think that we have enough. I'm gonna thank you very much for coming on the call. We did know that your slide presentation was your interpretation of waste management. And I know that you do believe in that because there's no other waste management in place and we are in a crisis, but we at BLARG don't feel that way. And we wanted you to be aware of the plight of our community, and also not only our community, all communities of diverse population, because we feel like it's a tremendous environmental injustice issue that most of the landfills, statistically, and if you want to go scientifically, are in low income, Black, Hispanic communities. And that is our point, and we will not stop at BLARG and as human beings to address these issues. But we do thank you for the information that you did share, and feel free to come back.
Thanks for having us.
Did Monique, you want to add something?
Well, we wanted to know if you're going to commit to coming back.
Yeah,
because,
will you commit to coming back?
We have talked to the DC. We haven't gotten this kind of
Sure.
calm down. But
yes,
the reason why we need to continue this conversation is because there was a lot of questions that were unanswered that you needed to follow up on. So we want to make sure that those things get followed up on. And this is a problem that we have to find a solution to. So if you guys are considered a stakeholder in this waste crisis, then you need to come back. We need to address how we're gonna move forward. And so we just want that commitment, and not just like a blanket 2,000, whenever, but a solid couple of weeks, next month, whatever it is, the DEC will be back to. Maybe we need to have you guys on together at some point, because we can't have the ping ponging of issues. We would love to have the town of Brookhaven on too. So if you can speak to Mr. What's his name, Mike Lagorcio, who represents the district that is affiliated with the town, with the landfill, and Mr. Ed Romaine, God knows that we can't get them to come here, but maybe you can. So that would be something that would be very beneficial, because I know the town puts a lot on the DEC. I know you put a lot on the DEC, and frankly, we put a lot on the DEC. So there needs to be an accounting done. And the only way I feel like we're gonna get that is if everybody's in the room. So the community and you all as well.
We'll be in the room whenever you want us.
Oh, thank you. And my last point is, it seems to be the conception of your business, we understand, and perhaps the town of Brookhaven, that burning trash is a waste management answer to a crisis. And I want to be aware if there is any through the town of Brookhaven, if there's any clarity of a possible option for another ash fill. I don't want it to be 2024 and they spring something on us, because you've been in business with the town of Brookhaven for how many years? Would you like to answer that, sir? Would you like to answer that, sir?
I'm not sure how to answer it. I don't know how long it's been, because it was in existence before I came to the company. So I'm not sure how long it has been.
Okay, so you understand my point. So
I
thank
do.
you very much. You understand my point, sir?
Definitely.
Thank you very much. Okay, and I do appreciate you being here tonight. BLARG members and community, thank you for attending our conversation with COVANTA. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.